Hello and good evening to Spotlight On. Today, it's a very special day actually. I got an exclusive interview with film director, producer and author, Mr. Tony Klinger. Hello, Tony.
Hello, Steve. Nice to speak with you again.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Last time we spoke was about, 2 years ago, was it? 1 or 2 years ago?
About that, yes, it was.
Right. The main thing is, this year, it's the 50th anniversary of the production of the film Get Carter. We're going to be talking quite a lot about this film and the other movies as well. But have you got any stories that you can share with our listeners about this film that your father produced?
Yes, well, there's several, but I'll start with one that was kind of amused me anyway. When we first got the book, it was called Jack's Return Home, as you already know. And we read the thing and instantly wanted to do it. And it was obvious that it had that kind of potential. And it's one of those times when something comes together and happens almost immediately, which is very rare, as you know, in anything to do with the entertainment industry, like bang, bang, and it was there. And in fact, from the time we got that copy of the book from the publisher, like a galley proof, I think it was, to the time it was in the cinema in Newcastle, was like 37 weeks, the fastest I've ever seen any film ever.
Yeah.
And what happened was that there was a need for a London apartment for a gangster in the film. As you will remember, it starts in that London apartment.
Yeah.
And they were going to build it, they were going to find it, they were looking for it. And I happened to date a girl from who's an American girl, who happened to be staying with her uncle in London. I won't mention any names because I don't know are still around. And we went to the apartment after we'd been out, and it was like a gangster's apartment. And I thought, wow, this is incredible. I said, would your uncle allow us to film in here? Because I'm doing this film. And eventually, after much toing and froing with this gentleman who I met, it became obvious if he could meet Michael Caine, he would allow us to use the apartment for a reasonable price. And then I sort of said casually to the young lady, I said, it's amazing because it's almost as if it was like a gangster's apartment. And then it became clear it was a gangster's apartment.
Oh, wow.
This gentleman took a liking to me and my then colleague. We were making little films ourselves.
Yeah.
And we were just about to do another film. And he asked us, how much money would it cost to make another film? Because he would be very keen to invest in it.
All right, okay.
And I sort of looked at him and I looked at my partner and I thought, oh, no, I don't think so. If it goes wrong, this might not be very good for us. So I tried to make it as difficult as I possibly could to deter him without being rude.
Yeah.
And eventually he was like shoving money in our pockets. He literally was giving cash. And I was going, no, it has to be checks. It has to go in a bank account. It has to go in a limited company. It has to have a contract. And he's going, no, we don't want any of that. And so it went on and on and on. Eventually, we came up to the apartment, and this was going to be the big confrontation scene where we were going to officially say no. And we came up, and there were a bunch of guys sitting around a table, and on the table they were playing cards, and on the table were keys. And I said, "What are you playing for?" Because I didn't see any money. And they said, "We're playing for the cars downstairs." And we looked down. There was a Jaguar and a Rolls Royce and an Aston.
Oh my God!
And they were playing hands of cards for the cars. And so I tried to get him to get his attention to say, look, we don't want to do this deal with you.
Yeah. And
he gave the nod to these two big guys. And we fancied ourselves that we could handle ourselves, but we couldn't handle ourselves with these boys. Yeah. And literally picked us up and threw us down the stairs. 3 flights, one after the other.
Wow.
That was my memory. And then about a year or two later, I was 21. It was my birthday. And we went to the Empress restaurant. My dad and mum took me with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, to the Empress restaurant to celebrate my birthday. And then somebody comes over, the chief waiter, with a Jeroboam of champagne, the best champagne.
Yeah.
And I go, what's this? I thought my dad had done it. And I don't even like champagne. But he said, no, this is for you from that gentleman over there. And it was from this guy. And I was going, Dad, don't drink it. Don't touch
Don't
it.
drink. That's the guy threw me down the stairs.
Yeah. So that was one of, I mean, I had many memories of that film, but that was one of the series of memories that it was seared into
Wow.
my mind. Yeah.
So, tell me, why did they choose to film Get Carter in Newcastle when it was supposed to be in Grimsby?
Well, that was for a reason. The director, Mike Hodges, he had been in, I think, in the Navy or the Coast Guard, and he knew the coast of England very well from his days in serving, and he thought, and we all agreed with him, that you needed somewhere which had a certain taste, certain quality to it that was not written about in the book, the original book.
Yeah.
So they toured. They went from town to town. I also went and different places, but this is primarily Mike and my father, Michael, and they found that Newcastle fitted exactly what they wanted, and to the point where I think you'll agree, Newcastle is almost like an extra character in the film. It's that ingrained, and you couldn't have that film take place anywhere else because it's so right. It's like typecast for that film, and that's what happened. It was cast like it would be an actor.
I was going to say that you couldn't actually put it in any other town, really. It's the backdrop, everything, the history of it. It's just phenomenal.
And it was at that time there was T. Dan Smith and Paulson and all those people of in the town, and it had a certain thing going on there that was unique. Hopefully, it was unique. That was but very interesting and very dynamic and very unusual. There was nothing else like it. It just was a spectacularly unique and had an atmosphere. I think Newcastle still does have a special atmosphere, by the way, but it was the people, the place, the locations, the bridges, everything about it was special.
You've actually, let me understand this correctly, you've now completed another film about your father and his career entitled The Man Who Got Carter. Why did you make it, and what plans do you have for it?
Well, we made it because I was, when I started production of that, exactly the age my father was when he passed. And I wanted to do it because it was like my love letter to my father. That, because you never know when somebody's going to go. I didn't know he was going to go. It was sudden. Yeah. And I felt that it was a memorial to him in his career, which was spectacular. And I made it so that other people could see why he was so special, because it was not just his ability as a filmmaker, it was his life force. It was him as a man. And the other thing was that it just felt like such a great story of a man who could bring himself up from nothing and become the most successful film producer in Europe for 15 years in a row, and which he was. And I just felt that was a story of the son of an immigrant and what can be achieved. If you look for, you don't look for reasons why you can't do something, you look for reasons and a way of doing something, and he did it. And I remember he used to get really fed up with me if I said to him, or somebody said to him, he was the most successful film producer in England or Europe. He says, "Why are you putting me down like that?" And I go, What do you mean putting me down? That's a compliment. He said, "I want to be compared with the best in the world. I don't want to be compared with the best in one little place." And he said, "I'd rather be a big fish in a big pond." And I got it. And I just felt like that was a story worth telling to inspire other people who were, facing difficulties, or you can achieve anything. And by the way, we're also making this year, because we over-filmed, we're making a film of the making of Get Carter, because that story's not been told properly. So there's The Man Who Got Carter, which is about my father and his life and career, and we're doing the story of the making of the film itself.
Now, do you think, is that going to be finished production for next year, or is it going to be in for September? Or
it's good. We're aiming it that to be coming out the same time as it was originally, 50 years after it was originally distributed, which, as you know, is next year.
I think next year, that'd be absolutely brilliant. That.
Yeah, we think so. We think a lot of people will be interested in it, and it still gets accolades. It still gets incredible mentions. It was funny because we've got all those fantastic mentions that you posted on Facebook, which I added to my timeline. And one little guy, I don't even know who he is. He said, "Well, I never liked it," and I was thinking, like, and that's the one that stood in my mind. Isn't that funny? You look at that and you go, like, why does that one stand in my mind? There's thousands of people that love that film.
Yeah.
You know, it was. Funny enough, it wasn't my father's favourite film of his own. His film that he thought was the best film he ever made was Cul-de-sac with Roman Polanski.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those few films, Get Carter, that with time has got better. It's kind of it sums up not just Newcastle, it sums up life in England in that particular time better than anything else I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, actually, I keep on saying this because it was released 1970, yeah. But for that time period, the content of even though some of the levels of violence is a bit calm to what you see in the cinema now, but for 1970, that was pretty profound. The baselines of the fights and everything else, it was quite how can I put it? I don't know the word now. It's like more up to date than it should have been, if you know what I mean.
Well, I actually think it was personally. I think it was an anti-violent film because it showed you what really happens, and I think that most times, especially in that period, and even now, you see some films where there's some person taking a hacksaw to somebody or an axe, and in lots of them, the next thing you cut to is he's got a little plaster on his head, and but he'd actually be in hospital for 3 months if he survived. You know, so it was. I think a profoundly interesting and good film, and just hit the zeitgeist. It hit exactly the right thing, the right time. Everything about it worked, and that's why critics around the call it one of the the least they call it is the best British gangster film of all time, which I agree with, and some say it's the best British film of all time. Time Out said that. I just think it was a very interesting kind of film, in that it was a snapshot of a country at a particular time of transition.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I've got it on DVD. I've got it on video cassette still. I watch it. I must have watched it about 50 times now. Yeah, I never get sick of it.
Well, you've watched it a lot more than me. I have to.
I think I know some of the lines off by heart by now. So it's really funny. You know what I mean? Something stick out in your mind. Right. Let's talk about yourself, Tony. Now, your career's been magnificent, and a few people don't know about certain things. Now, you've been busy recently producing 2 new films, Solo to Darwin and Sisters.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. I produced and co-directed Solo to Darwin, which we're in post-production on right now, which is the story of a young lady called Amanda Harrison. And it's the story of how she, despite tremendous adversity, including the fact that she was. I have to go back a bit. She started off. She was a kid at school, and they told her she was thick. And I don't know if you've ever been told you're thick. I was told I was thick
all the time.
And it turned out she was dyslexic, and it turned out that she's not only not thick, she went on to get her commercial jet pilot license. So she's very bright, and in her career, she always wanted to emulate the flight of Amy Johnson nearly 100 years ago, who went in a Gypsy Moth plane from England to Darwin in Australia. And she was planning to do this. And in the time she was planning to do this, unfortunately, her father died. And in the same couple of weeks, she discovered she had bad breast cancer. And she had to have eventually operations in a double mastectomy and a reconstruction, and was in severe physical problems, and decided that despite that, she was going to do this. She was not going to be put off. And I first knew about it about 6 weeks before she was due to take off, when the guy who's her partner, Mike, came to me, who knows me because he used to work with me in another company at another time, and said, "Tony, I know you can pull things off." He said, "Would you be interested in making a film of this story?" And I went, "You're crazy. How am I going to pull that together in 6 weeks?" Well, sometimes fate makes it possible. And we did. we pulled it together, and we started filming 6 weeks later. And this is the story of her, how she got to where she got to, what happened, continuing triumph over adversity. Bird hits the engine conks out over the sea. We hear that the Iranians are going to shoot her down over the Straits of Hormuz, and all of those things makes a fantastic film. And everybody's going to see the results of that after the lockdown. We'll be proud to show that film, Solo to Darwin. It's an amazing story. The other one that we're doing, again, happened to me. I'm very lucky and blessed. I think I'm kind of like a magnet to some good projects. And a young man came to me via another friend and said he was making this film. He wanted to make this film, and he was going to make a series of them. And I said, what's he talking about? And he said he wanted to make a series based on the idea that you could generate peace through music. He was a composer, and he felt that if you could bring two warring sides together in a situation, and the harmony of the music would help create a peaceful solution, or potentially. And so to do his first one, he went to Kabul in Afghanistan and filmed with his music the first all-female orchestra in Kabul, Afghanistan, of students. Girls are like 18, 19, 17.
Yeah.
And did it. And he did it. And these girls, it very much agitated the Taliban, who don't believe that the girls should have education, let alone play music.
Yeah.
And so in the end, when we did the catch up on this, it was a wonderful film, by the way. The 10 of these girls from that orchestra have had to flee Afghanistan under threat of their lives. So it's a story of these girls and that orchestra, and what can be done and what is done, despite, again, tremendous odds. And that's called Sisters. And it's the first of a series called Peace Beats. And the next one we've already shot is in the West Bank, in between the Palestinians and the Israelis. We're trying to put together the music. We've done that one. And that's going to be in post-production not long, very soon. And then we hope to do similar things across the world. And, that's a major ambition of ours. We aim to do another 12 of them.
Wow.
Yeah, each one's like a feature-length film on its own.
Yeah.
And so those are my ones that are in current production. I will stop talking now for a second and let you ask me a question.
That's okay. This is, it's really entertaining, and it's very informative, because what I was going to ask you about was your latest book, because you've got a book now, haven't you? You just is that right? Have I got that right? You just wrote a book.
What happened is we have several books, second editions of my book. The Butterfly Boy came out 2 months ago.
Uh-huh.
The second edition of the Who and I is out, which was the book about my making the film with the Who, called The Kids Are All Right, and it was personally known as Twilight of the Gods, and I hated that title, but my first publisher insisted on it, and so we've now changed it back to the title it originally was, which is The Who and I, which makes a lot more sense.
Which more, yeah.
And then we've got another book out that was called Under God's Table, which you can find on Amazon. Nothing to do with God, by the way. It's to do with something that's written on the table that they think came from some holy relic. And it's set in Iraq and that war and everything. And the new book that we're going to be not till later this year or beginning of next year even, is called Alsatia, The Search for Treasure. And it's a rollicking adventure story set in 17th century London, and that is the first of a series of books about that period in that part of London, which was known at that time in the 17th century as Alsatia.
Quite a full diary over the next couple of months and years, have you got, isn't you? Going to be really busy.
Yeah, that's nothing. I've got also, starting next week, we have a thing called on in just like in the next few days, a thing called Pitch Perfect Projects, which is part of my thing called Give, Get, Go. And the idea of that Give, Get, Go was give ideas, get help, go do it. Because so many people, I'm sure you have heard the same thing, come to you and say, I've got this idea. And you go and you say, well, what are you doing with it? And they go, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And it's looking for an excuse to fail. And I think, well, I'll take away that excuse. I'll show you the reason to succeed. And so this is all part of that, to provide the knowledge base and the help and give the assistance to take people who feel they are creative, who feel they've got a potential opportunity, who maybe want to change their career or want to show what they can do or do something part-time that's creative. And this is for filmmakers, writers, book writers, playwrights, anybody like that. And we'll show them how to do it. And number one, obviously, the Give Get Go is like a community outreach thing, which is free, but we have to pay for it. So the virtual retreats and the good bits have a paywall because we have to get paid to run the organisation.
Yeah.
But I think it's a cost. It's more or less, it's very reasonable. But what we are doing is providing answers to those questions, because always people say, well, how do you do that? How do you get that? And the key element of it, Steve, is that they don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to teach them long distance how to operate a camera. So that can be taught by anyone, and it's actually quite easy and mechanical. And how to get good at it is as an art form, but the mechanics of it are quite easy. What we teach, what I'm sharing, is the knowledge set that goes with how to make it so that you get paid, so that you can have a job from it, how you can make a business from it, how you generate money from it. Because without that, it's just a hobby. And I think people need to have more than that to back it up. Otherwise, it will be just something that they fancy to do and they never get around to doing it.
Well, I tell you what we're going to do, Tony. We're going to have one more question, right? And then we're going to have a little break for music. All right. And then after we come back, I'm going to talk more in depth about the Who and I, The Kids Are All Right, the Butterfly Band, also things that happened with Supertramp, and mentioning about Deep Purple as well. So the final question for the first part is this. Over the long career, you've and your dad have been involved with like many iconic productions that people didn't know about, that you will be behind them, like The Avengers, Up the Junction, another classic British film, and you've also got the film Gold, Shout at the Devil. Can you tell me one thing? How is it that your family have the knack of working on films and shows that just keep on, they're timeless?
I think I was talking about somebody about this kind of thought process just yesterday. We're choosing some talent to a film I've just written called Reaper's Shadow, a feature film. And I was talking about the director. Somebody offered us this director. And I said, he knows how to point a camera, but he doesn't know how to make the characters sing, and he doesn't know how to get empathy. And while you're doing something that's just sort of dross, it's kind of like you're looking down at your feet and you're not looking up at the universe. To make something that has some timeless appeal, you have to look up at the universe and you have to look up and out. And so I guess the answer to your question is, you're not looking just to tell the story, you're looking to make it sing for people. Somebody once said to me about camera work, and they were saying, oh, this guy can light it. And I said, no, he can point a light at it and illuminate it. This other guy, he paints with light. And that's the difference.
That's the difference.
You're trying to do more than just get it on the screen. Because it's much more interesting, and B, because it has some kind of longevity. There's no point in doing it. I also don't think it's as successful, but there's no point in doing it just because you can do it. I remember when the guy who was head of development for us in America, a very bright young man, and my father died, and I was obviously very upset. And he was comparing him, my father, to this American guy who died, who made some really successful comedies. And Brad was the guy's name. And Brad said to me, he said, that guy, he's made a lot of money and he's going to be the richest man in the graveyard, but no one's going to remember him. He said, I guarantee you in 40, 50, 100 years' time, they'll still remember your dad's name, because he's done things that resonate through the ages, because he made memories for people. And when I think back on it, and I've been lucky to be involved in some of those and some of my own, and that's all you can ask for. If you can in your career make those resonance, those things that resonate, create ripples in the pond of life. That is what it makes things iconic. Now, I don't take credit for the Avengers or Up the Junction. I happen to be around. I happen to work on them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been very lucky, and I also was very picky. I think that's the other thing. My father too was that when I was starting out like making music films, there was me and another guy in London kind of doing it, and there wasn't many other people in those days. It was called pop promos.
Yeah.
And we met, and I didn't know him very well, or vice versa. And I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to pile it high and sell it cheap, and I'm going to just dominate this market." Kind of thinking I was going to compete with him. I said, "Well, I'm going to do the opposite." He said, "What's that?" I said, "Well, unless I like the music, unless I can be inspired by these guys, how many ways can I, film a guy playing a guitar?" And that's what we did. I went my way, he went his way. Both of us in our own ways very successful. Yeah. But that was the difference. The reason my things went on and resonated, and you won't know this guy's name if I said it, is because he was just interested in generating a pile of product, pile it high, sell it cheap. And I was interested in, well, what makes that band tick? And that was what was interesting. And so I think that answers maybe your question.
It does actually, yeah. But what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little break, have some music, and then we're going to talk more in depth about those classic rockumentaries, as I'll call them, that you made. All right, so stay with us. We'll play some music and...